Welcome to
That's High Praise,
a Nicolas Cage podcast.
I am your host, VH Zest.
And I am your other host, Captain Nostalgia. And this might be the shortest one we've done so far.
Lord, I hope so. I really hope so. So, we watched this movie with divided attention, and it is called, Kill Chain.
I paid more attention than you did, I think.
Absolutely. That's very true. Do you want a reward?
No. No, I want to throw a disclaimer in this is that A, this is probably going to be a shorter podcast than usual, and B, this will probably be like how we do like film festivals where we talk more from a review standpoint and not necessarily focus on mental health as much.
Or even story.
Because this movie's riddled with it. I will go ahead and throw a synopsis in here because...
Please do that. Please save trivia for last because that's the only thing I'm excited about.
So the synopsis of this movie, Nicolas Cage plays a guy named... How you say it?
Araña. It's the Spanish word for spider.
Okay, so he plays this guy named Araña who basically wins this beat down a hotel in a poker game. And
it's a cool vibe, honestly.
Yeah, so people are coming to kill him because we learn later on in the movie, the end of the movie, that he was, would you say a mercenary? Was that kind of the vibe you got?
Yes, I think so. The whole movie is based around like assassinations and the idea of like blood money, but there's a much more personal twist toward the end.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm sorry. Everything is toward the end.
So he's telling this story of how he won the hotel in a poker game. And everything is kind of told anthologically throughout the course of 2/3 of this movie, if not like
more
80% of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to see a little bit of everything, and there are these characters that just kind of trade off. This movie to me feels like the passing off of like a torch, or like the passing off of like a football from like one player to another.
Okay. Can I, you've used that word a couple of times anthologically, and I think it's a really good, strong word. If you've ever seen the movie Trick or Treat, that is an incredible, like, world-building anthology of several different stories. They link into each other gently at different times. And this movie does feel that way, except it's poorly done and out of order. That's kind of what Josh means by anthologically. Like, it's not necessarily different stories. It's more like cuts, and then they try to quilt it together at the end. And
no, so like what I mean by that particularly is that like, so the first story that he tries to tell is the story of a hitman who's on a job and has basically been set up by another hitman to be dead. And then that story slowly transforms into Two Crooked Cops, which eventually turned into this like love story that connects with Nicolas Cage. And
as all love stories should.
Yeah, it's just this movie is a mess.
It is. It's really a mess. It's got a great color palette. It has a interesting score, and it has Nicolas Cage in it.
So a lot of these, and I'm just gonna even put it into here that like even in the course of like the way that they approach characters don't even feel like they are given like real thought. So like Enrico Colantoni, who is the gentleman we meet in the very beginning, is just called the Old Sniper. Angie Capata, who is basically the female central antagonist for this movie.
Antagonist or protagonist? Because there are two females.
True. I guess she would be the protagonist. Because
the woman in the red dress?
Yeah, she's the lesser of two evils.
There you go.
You want to know what her character's name is?
Sure.
Just take a guess.
Take a guess?
Take a guess at what her character's name is.
I don't know that much Spanish. I don't know.
Oh wait, sorry, hold on. No, the actual antagonist. Because there's two. I looked it back up. So she is the antagonist. Is just called the Very Bad Woman. Do you?
That right there, the title of that particular character is a fantastic and thorough summary of this movie and how well it is put together.
So at the beginning of the movie, there's two assassins that come to, well, kill Nicolas Cage's character.
Rip.
Would you like to know what their characters are and how they're differentiated?
Yeah, sure. Those are the guys in like the very, very beginning and the guys to whom he tells the story, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So the one that we thought was from the New Girl, who is not, that is Ali Me Ballard. He is called the Curious Assassin, and the other
a children's nursery rhyme. Like
the other one is called is played by Pedro Calvo, and he is called the Mean Assassin.
So it's like the antithesis of good cop, bad cop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know like where to start with this movie because
or where to end because the movie didn't know either.
So yeah, like that's and I mean like the ending we can like talk about in just a few minutes, but like even like the characters in this movie just immediately feel like not interesting.
Yeah. Not only disinteresting, but like the movie, the majority of the time, each scene is out of context, and you learn their context or a bit of their context later on, but there's never given a reason why the story was told from the perspectives that it was. So yeah, each new character that you meet feels uninteresting. I mean, they like one of the original like first characters is this assassin who's like older, and he just so much of the dialogue is about a rice cooker, and it's like this could be symbolic, but it's totally not. It's just not. And then yeah, you move on. Like probably the only person that you seem that interested in the whole time is this like the protagonist, like woman in the red dress. And then Nicolas Cage. The times that you do see him, he's not like. It's not one of those things where he's only in the movie for 20 minutes, but he's in the movie for like 5 minutes at the beginning, and then you go like almost 40 without seeing him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
like,
so yeah, it's real messy. And then there's a scene with these cops, and again, very uninteresting, non-contextual. And then there's a bunch of shooting, and then it's unclear whether or not this guy that they captured was holding drugs or not drugs. Very confusing.
You talking about the sketchy cops?
Yeah.
So they actually like got him just because they wanted the diamonds.
Right, and you like kind of figure that out, but you don't immediately know that they're jewels.
Yeah.
They could just as well be drugs.
They said that there was jewels.
Did they?
They did. So
man, I never heard that.
So context. Because context, rice cooker sniper.
Right.
We're just going to call him that.
That might as well be his name.
Because that's such a better name than what he's actually credited as the old sniper. Rice cooker dude gets double crossed by, in the end, it's revealed Nicolas Cage's character. And the guy that actually gets stopped by the cops. And also, shout out to any Dead Silence or True Blood fans out there, because one of these sketchy cops is played by Ryan 1010. I probably mispronounced that name, but if you know, you know. Anyways,
all right.
Basically, what happens in this man is basically like he calls his the guy that called hired the hit for him, and is like, hey, like the guy that contracted you wanted to pay you in diamonds. This is where they are. So they are diamonds, and they keep referring back to the diamonds several times throughout the course of it. So it's not that they got him for drugs.
Sure.
It's that they wanted the diamonds and that they were just like sketchy AF.
That's like totally fair, but for one thing, you don't know who the guy with the diamonds is. Like the original guy, you don't know until way, way later, like the end of the movie later.
They kind of like hint around at it, because we should also mention that rice cooker dude hires a prostitute to go over and like get the inside scoop on who the guy is. And like the way that the shot is like set up, like you can kind of see it's him. So like that and like the context of like the phone call like kind of made me I was like, okay, I can be here with this.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying there. Also, there's no way to spoil this movie, so just don't even worry about that. Honestly.
I think we've talked about the ending like 3 times already.
Because you can't talk about the rest of the movie without referencing the ending because the rest of the movie doesn't have context.
That's fair.
That's the movie's biggest problem. And I understand that there is sort of like an art to backward storytelling and sort of like arriving at a resolution at the end that makes sense of like what's happened. This movie does that very poorly, if at all.
So I'm going to make a just wild analogy here.
Okay.
And backward storytelling is like fugu. And fugu. It's a type of fish. And it's like it's poisonous if it is prepared incorrectly. So you're really taking like a gamble in your life to eat it.
Sure.
And that's how backward storytelling feels. Like if it's not done correctly, it feels disastrous to watch.
Right. But then there's like every single episode of Breaking Bad.
That's fair.
That's proper backward storytelling. It's gentle and small form because you really only get one forward shot at the beginning and then the episode builds up to it. But it's done well and executed well every single time. It's kind of part of what the show is known for. This, you don't get that. You don't get that at all.
I feel like a large portion of why you don't get that is because you're giving characters that you really just don't care about.
No, yeah, you never really do care about them. Like, and if you start to care about one character, you have to understand that character has an enemy, which I guess is kind of a nod to like the complexity of the film, but it's not less confusing. But it is kind of interesting that it seems like every single character in every single scene has some sort of enemy, regardless of like what their intentions are.
So my biggest problem with this movie is the fact that each character feels like a stock character.
Yeah, everybody feels like an NPC or a background character.
Yeah, like it's like, okay, like even in the I come back to the names like Old Sniper, Mean Assassin, Curious Assassin, Very Bad Woman. Like those are just very like lazy ways to like write.
Those are titles, and I think that that's really fine if you're trying to tell something. If what you're doing is parabolic, if you're trying to tell some sort of cautionary tale, or some sort of, if you're trying to tell a story that has representatives and is maybe an allegory of something else, that works very, very well. That is not what this is. This is like an interpersonal, like diamond smuggling, human trafficking number.
Yeah, which is so weird. Like, let's jump into the ending. So, like, it's revealed that, like, the reason why, is it Franco?
Frank, which one are you talking about?
Franco is the guy that, like, sold.
Oh, the guy who sold, yes.
Yeah, so Franco is...
He's the original owner of this hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Nicolas Cage's character, Aranya, quote, won from him.
Yeah, so... He basically, like, the two of them are, like, mercenaries, and they're basically hired to, or assassins, one of the two. The movie's never really clear.
Nope.
They basically get hired to burn this box truck, and so they open up the box truck to see what was inside, and it's, I think he said, like, a dozen, like, under, girls that are under, like, the age of, like, 13.
Yeah, they're like tweens, yeah.
And so, like... He gains a heart, and they basically keep one. Franco keeps one as an adopted daughter, and then they let the rest go, and then they basically take the money, and they're on the run. And then, like, she ends up, like, leaving. But, like, it takes this, like, really dark twist, and it just doesn't even do anything with it.
Yeah. Yep. They kind of, like... Don't they explain that, like, yeah, one of the guys grows a conscience, he takes the girl, kind of raises her on her own, like raises her to be his daughter, kind of, and then maybe I missed this, maybe I didn't. Is that girl supposed to be one of the girls in the movie?
No, so when she's 17, she basically is like, F you, dad,
That's
and leaves.
Yeah, that's right. That's what.
And he gets caught, like she gets caught by the two shady cops from the second segment.
Right. Yeah, that's right. It's weird. The movie the movie feels very personal at multiple times, which is kind of the confusion of it, is because like at one point there's this knife fight between these two women, and you up at this point you're starting to gain an idea that like, oh, this is for diamonds that are worth X amount. They've been throwing around a few numbers, again unsure there, and the way one woman kills the other, it's just like, it's not greed, it's not self-defense. It like feels really, really personal. And so like Nicolas Cage's character tells the story, and you kind of gain some understanding of like certain personal aspects of the movie. But realistically speaking, most of it is greed. It's just payout, and it's not personal. And it just like, it has gentle personal elements that just feed into what you might call the business of the matter. And it doesn't really, there's no sense of closure on either end, whether the business end or the somewhat personal matters. It's weird.
Yeah. And I want to preface this by saying that I love a movie with a social commentary.
Sure.
I love movies that like make me feel something and make me turn to Google afterwards and say, I need to know X more about like this theme.
Yeah.
And human trafficking is something that I think for both of us is like close to our hearts. And something that a lot of people around us are very passionate about. And I would have been all for this movie embracing that, but it does feel like there are several times where this film feels like it has a idea of what it wants to do, and then just doesn't. It just goes the opposite way, and it's like, how can we say something without actually saying something?
Yeah. It's like the movie sets itself for the opportunity to raise awareness for, human trafficking or even some racial commentary, and things like that. Like, it sets itself up for the potential opportunity to be able to speak to those things, and does nothing with them. Just does nothing with them at all.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, not everybody, you like good social commentary. Not everyone does, because they feel like, oh, you just made something that was a fun story political, and not everybody likes that, and that's fine. But like, yeah, it's weird. It's not satisfactory because of like they had an opportunity that they didn't use, but it's also not satisfactory because it's like they were trying to tell a story that you didn't care about. They never convinced you about.
We talked about this before we started watching the movie, about like the state of comedy nowadays, how it's so hard to make a comedy because it feels like everyone gets triggered really easily, and kind of almost feels like the writer of this movie was trying to bring awareness to certain issues, but was like, I better not. So like he started hitting backspace.
Yeah, like backpedaled, yeah.
And kind of wanted to not really, offend anyone in the process of like trying to raise awareness.
Yeah.
And a portion of that is that so many of these characters, they just feel forgettable. So many of these scenarios where, how many movies have we seen where you have a sniper that is going to, has to snipe someone else.
Sure.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yeah.
Great example, right off the top of my head. And then, even like the cops, dirty cops. Like, how many times have we seen that?
Yeah.
Like,
these are overused tropes.
Yeah. And then, like, the retired assassin who's, getting killed or hunted by the new assassins. Like, we've seen these things before so many times.
Yeah.
And I guess let's jump into Nicolas Cage, because Nicolas Cage might be the saving grace of this movie.
No, he's just the best part.
You think that you really think he's not that great?
I think he's great. I think he was the only person who had a real sense of his character.
So that's so easy to say though, because like his character is basically what 90% of the series of events we see entangle back to him.
Yeah, that's true. And it's kind of like, it's interesting too, because you're correct, but also he has to say it.
That's fair.
He has to tell you that.
He's a storyteller.
And it's like, it's like the movie could have been noir and had some sort of, narration to it, but didn't. And it was like what they tried to do was tell a story as though it were noir, but let the cinematography speak for itself, but it didn't really have a voice. And then the story revolves around this character who just has to tell you everything by the end anyway. And yeah, it's very interesting. But Nicolas Cage, I don't want to tell you that he's inconsistent throughout this movie, because I think he's the most consistent part about this movie. But his character does really open up as the movie goes along. And so when you first see him, the first couple of scenes that he's in, which are like 40 minutes apart, he's just kind of like, he's not necessarily funny, but you can tell that he's kind of just this like,
he's charming.
He's charming. He's kind of sarcastic. He like takes a shot with this lady and does finger guns at her. But it's not like a, it seems real. It seems appropriate. It seems like that's just this guy. He's this barkeep. He's this hotel owner, and he's just going to be chummy because he's an insomniac and he can, and he knows something you don't know, which that's not apparent until way later.
What? That's not even apparent until the credits roll.
Yeah.
Which, like is piss poor. So like, all right. So Acosta's character is like the central female protagonist. We follow her.
Yeah, the girl in the red dress. Yeah.
Yeah, we follow her for like the 90% of the movie.
Oh yeah.
Well, not 90%.
Like 75.
Probably like half. Yeah. But like she ends up like getting to the hotel and finding out that like Franco no longer owns it, and that she's supposed to be meeting, how do you say it?
Araña,
which means
spider
in Spanish.
Yes.
And it's not even revealed to the very end when the credits roll that Nicolas Cage is the character she was there to meet, which would have been such a cool like introduction. Like, imagine how BA that would have been to just kind of have that interaction, be like, oh, well, I'm the guy you're looking for.
Yeah. Which like kind of would have been, but they allude that like he wants something from her or she wants something from him, because she's like, you look like a violent man. You have, cuts on your hands and like violence in your eyes and on all these things. And so you get the idea that she's trying to use him for protection. And so they kind of like, they get it on, and it's kind of like one of those things where she uses him by letting him use her, I guess. I don't know. It's weird. Like they could have such a good dynamic, and they do. Some of their dialogue is that's probably the best part of the movie.
So that, all right. So to your point about their relationship is, they are embracing another trope.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the weirdest part of the movie for me, because like their dialogue is so philosophical. It feels so out of left field and so out of tone for the rest of the movie, that while I do agree, like, it is definitely one of the better parts in the movie, it doesn't feel like it seems to fit with everything else.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, the movie up until that point didn't really have a ton of dialogue. Well, like it did, but there was no context for it, so it kind of didn't feel like it mattered. Whereas their dialogue didn't necessarily feel like it mattered, but then it kind of like, it was charming, it was fun, and it holds weight the longer you watch the story unfold from that point.
Well, I am going to jump on the bandwagon with talk about Cage. I think that you're right, like he's the most consistent part of it, but I'm also going to see it and also say that he feels really forgettable. And that's not necessarily his fault. I think it's definitely more the dialogue, because like he's just not really given anything to do. Like even when he's given more screen time, like it feels almost as if I don't even know how to describe it. Like it feels like you're waiting for him to do something, and we just never kind of see that.
Yeah, you see some gunshots, but like, who cares? You had seen that the whole time in the movie, and in a way, like it's kind of cool how he like explains everything that goes on, but so much of the movie was spent in confusion up to that point that there's no satisfaction to it. It's not like one of those moments where it's like, oh, that's what this means. You never feel that way.
Yeah,
you actually never do, and you're supposed to in this kind of movie.
Yeah, I feel like you brought up Trick or Treat earlier. This film attempts to push the Trick or Treat kind of approach to anthologies where you're getting all of these separate stories that are going to tie together in the end.
Yeah.
By the time that you get there, like you just don't care about these stories anymore.
Right.
I just found myself not caring about these characters, not caring about their motives, not caring about them, just because like this movie feels incredibly hopeless.
Yeah.
If I can put it bluntly.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I say that is just because you're not rooting for anyone the entire movie. Everyone is a butthole.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone. Like I said earlier, I mean, and that's a great summary, but like I said earlier, everyone in the movie has an enemy. And so because the movie is built that way, you never feel like somebody is the hero. You never feel like, oh yeah, I hope this guy doesn't die. Like, it's very hopeless, and it leaves you, even before you get to the end, it leaves you not really wanting to know how it ends. Or not caring how it ends.
Yeah.
And then when you get an ending, it's just, I mean,
talk about the ending?
It just ends. I mean, what's there to talk about?
So the ending that we are left with is he basically goes back to Nicolas Cage goes back to Rice Cooker Sniper, and Rice Cooker is like, you set these series of events into motion. Here's my phone and here's my gun. Go protect my daughter.
Yeah.
And we see Nicolas Cage dialing his daughter, and cue black screen.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like it's supposed to be a sequel, but there's not enough here for anyone
I don't care.
to care about a sequel.
Yeah. I don't care. There have been movies that are, you know how like if you love a good series and you're watching this, various entries in a series of movies, and one of the entries is really, really bad, but it doesn't stop you from wanting more of the series.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like this is way worse than any of those horrible movies that just came to mind when I said that. Like, it's worse than any Friday the 13th movie. It's worse. Like, it's just, you don't want more.
Yeah. I mean, at least Friday the 13th had, there's some fun about it.
Right. Like, you could always expect a few things, probably in some order. And as long as you like those things, you're going to keep coming back.
All right. Well, you want to look on the bright side for some trivia?
Please.
All right. Trivia. So Nicolas Cage in this movie has a beard. Do you want to know what his original choice for facial hair was?
Just a mustache?
Just a mustache.
Yeah.
But what kind of mustache would it have been? Like, do you feel like for like his energy, would he have had the mustache from Arsenal, or like a Hogan stash?
Oh man. Gosh, I don't want to think about Arsenal. I don't know. I feel like it probably would have been like maybe a little longer, maybe a little unkept, maybe. But I don't know, because his beard was really nice and groomed.
Or he could have had like
maybe some handlebars. Maybe, I don't know. I think they would have avoided making it look too groomed, because he would have just looked like a cop.
Sure.
And that would have, of course, not that this movie was super well thought out. Maybe it would have just looked like that. Who cares?
I'd like to think that like he's cool enough to have a handlebar. That's my answer.
Yeah. I mean, he can grow a mustache, so.
This is the second Nicolas Cage movie to be shot in Colombia in 2018. The first one was Running with the Devil, which we covered earlier this year. The seventh. This is the trivia fact that makes no sense to me.
Okay.
This is the seventh Nicolas Cage movie where he has played a character named John, but he does not play a John in this.
No.
I mean, do they even actually give him a name in this?
No, never. You don't know. Okay, so the lady comes up to him and she's like, I'm supposed to meet a man here named Aranya. And he's like, well, that's the word for spider. You know, and they go on and they discuss like, oh, well, you've met plenty of Aranyas in your life, et cetera, et cetera. Honestly, pretty good dialogue. And then at the very end of the movie, in the credits, you see that Nicolas Cage plays a man named Aranya. And that's it. That's all you get.
Yeah, so these trivia facts that I'm pulling from are from IMDb, and even on IMDb, they have it credited as Aranya.
Yeah.
So, this one is made in the vein of the, quote, greatest detective noirs. And it is not. And my last fact is, in the 51st minute, Ariana's shotgun extracts the spent shell castings, but one hears only one shell, and the sound is clearly lighter as if it was plastic instead of lead.
Wow.
That's a deep cut, man. I appreciate that last fact, man.
Yeah, I mean, same, I guess. I don't know that I learned a lot.
Man, we just get to picture Nicolas Cage with a handlebar mustache, you know.
That's fine with me.
All right, man. We're gonna do this. We're gonna end on a 2-part question. I think the first question is this movie worthy of high praise?
No.
Speaks for itself.
No. So not.
Absolutely.
We have trashed this movie for however long this has been.
32 minutes.
30.
I mean, and some of that is trivia. So.
Yeah, and some of it's us having to reference other movies or the little intro.
So, you know, at least 25 minutes. So we're going to just announce this now. At the end of the year, our goal for either the last episode of this year or one of the first episodes of next year is to do a top 10 films of Nicolas Cage that we've covered this year.
Yep.
And I think we're both in agreement about what the worst movie is.
I think we probably are too. It's probably not even this one.
I was going to ask, do you think this one is worse? Because I think it's Arsenal.
It's Arsenal.
Do you think this one is worse than Arsenal?
No, Arsenal's worse than this.
Really?
I think Arsenal is worse than this. This is a Nicolas Cage podcast, Josh. First and foremost, this is a Nicolas Cage podcast. And this is what I have to say. Nicolas Cage's character in this movie, and you can say he's forgettable, and I'm not disagreeing with you, he is just much more palatable and fun than Arsenal. And Arsenal is confusing for his character because that character died in a different movie.
Yeah, so the reason that I'm going to defend it for Arsenal being a better movie than this one, it's not by much. It's not by much. So look, here's where I'm placing this movie. Here's where I'm placing Arsenal.
Nice, just right on top.
So they're literally right on top of each other. What sells Arsenal as a stronger movie for me is the slow-mo brutality scenes.
Yeah, that's fair. The cinematography in Arsenal was, it was there,
way
first of all.
palatable.
Yeah, this movie, the color palette's good. The cinematography is not. It's not there. It's boring.
No, it's yeah. It's very DIY. And there's nothing wrong with DIY, but
the budget was obviously too high for it to feel as DIY as it did.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I land.
I mean, I don't know, man. But next time on That's High Praise, we're getting into the jungles with Primal, another 2019 release, which was released 5 weeks after this one.
Nice.
So, where can people find you online? I think that's it for this one though.
Yeah.
The socials.
Yeah. So Mullet Stash at Mullet Stash on Instagram, also at VH Zest on Instagram. And then Yeah, that's what I usually do, right? Oh, I do write poetry. I'm intending to actually record some more, which I haven't done in a while. So if you want to go to micahkimber.bandcamp.com or just search Micah Kimber in like Spotify or Apple Music, you'll find that there.
All right, and before I give my socials, I want to just plug this. We are in the process right now of doing our first ever film festival. So if you or someone you know is a filmmaker, specifically a horror filmmaker, and you have a short or you have a feature, there are links in the descriptions below where you guys can check that out. But it's called Horrific Hope, and it's going to be April 29th and 30th. We're currently accepting submissions, and if you get in before, we're currently running the early bird deal right now. So if you get your submissions in before the 18th of December, you will be paying a significantly less, but you guys can follow me. I am on Letterboxd at Captain Nostalgia, and you guys can follow our parent company, Victims and Villains. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube, along with wherever you guys get your podcast from. Go to victimsandvillains.net, where you guys can find your find more podcasts like the one you're currently listening to. You can find our mental health resource library and all of our social medias. So until next time, remember to keep on caging.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text help to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below, wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.